I'll call this meeting of the Board of Finance, Town of Granby to order. First order of business, confirming quorum. 5 in attendance, plus Jenny Emery on Zoom. Next item is approval of minutes from the last meeting of May 28th. Any corrections, modifications, comments? If not, motion to approve would be in order.
I would make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Further discussion? There being none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Abstentions? None.
One. I was
Absence. Thank you very much, James. Item number 2, Kimmy and Mike.
Mr. Chairman, I will defer to Kimmy. This is her bailiwick, and she can walk the Board of Finance through her intentions on the capital lease.
So the staff is asking the Board of Selectmen reconsider to use the interfund loan for the FY24 capital equipment purchase. One of the loan is from the Q&D fund for $45,000, and the second loan is for the small cap fund for $426,000. The reason for that is the interest rate is still currently high. For the non-tax exempt interest rate is around between 6 to 7%. With the state just approved $2 million grant from the OPM office for the emergency communication project, the staff believe that interfund loan will serve a better purpose.
Which will get paid back into the general fund.
Yes.
Over the 5-year time.
Yep, and I also attached the amortization table for both loans. One is 4.5 years term, the other one is 2-year term.
And that and the transfers we'll discuss shortly are all built into your projection for June
Yes. Yep.
fiscal year end. Thank you. Questions from the board, if any?
just one. The comment about the $2 million grant for the emergency communication project might be throwing me for a slight loop. Are we saying that, in fact, since we're getting that grant, the money that we have in the capital project fund is some of it can now be freed up for this loan, or are we saying that we're borrowing part of that $2 million?
Well, in the FY25 adopted budget, we budgeted 4.6 from the general fund transfer to the emergency communication fund up to. So for that 4.6 right now, we can actually only transfer up to 2.6. So it's free up $2 million from the general fund, which can be used for this interfund loan.
Understood. So we're using existing general fund funds, not, I want to clarify this for the town, right? Mm-hmm. We won't be using any of the grant money to create this loan. We just now have additional general fund funds that we will not be allocating to this project as originally planned.
Yes, correct.
Perfect.
So the net cost to the town is zero?
Yeah.
The net cost to the town, yes. Well, between the fund, you have to pay the interest. So the small cap and the Q&D will have to pay the interest to the general fund.
But the net cost
to the town is zero because it's moving from one pocket to the other pocket, but it's all the town fund.
So I have a question.
Please, go ahead.
All right. Thank you. I can hear an echo, so I'll keep it brief. Why does Q&D need to borrow money? I think it closed the year out with 170 plus in the account. I'm surprised it needs to borrow money. And then a related question is, when any of these funds have reserves sitting in them, do we allocate some of the interest income that we make during the year to the funds?
Not all funds earn interest. It depends on the fund. Like the bond fund will earn interest. Small cap fund does earn interest. The Q&D is not. And when we calculate the interfund loan, the estimate for the Q&D fund at that time doesn't have a 170 surplus. So that's why we resulted in a $45,000 needed for that fund. And for the Q&D, they purchased like one-to-one technology equipment. That's what the fund is for and the loan is for. Did that answer all your questions?
No, well, I guess maybe, my understanding is that the Board of Ed has, this isn't a request from the Board of Ed, it's something that you've done centrally because of
No,
cash flow in the fund, I assume, and I'm just wondering whether it really needs to be done and why.
this is what has historically been done with what items are purchased through it, the one-on-one.
Through the Q&D fund you're asking, we use that for transportation lease for our buses and the technology, the one-to-one.
Yeah,
So all I'm asking is, when we know we have a large balance, and as of the February meeting, they were projecting a balance, so I guess I'm just saying, does it need to borrow the money? Because it is costing the Q&D, I realize it's zero sum to the town. I just want to make sure we're not doing an interfund loan that isn't needed.
So Jenny, is your question, I think I'm getting your vibe. If at the time we prepared this, the fund, the overage was not identified, the fact that the overage is identified now, is this something that still needs to be done?
Well, yeah, although the overage isn't real until the books are closed for the year, but it was being projected for the last 6 months.
Okay.
So I don't know how much Q&D spends day one. If the issue is 90% of what it has to spend has to get spent in September, and that's why we need this, that's fine. I just want to make sure people understand why we're doing it.
Right.
And whether we need to.
Well, the February, are you mentioning the February Q&D report? There's some general entry on the Board of Ed side that didn't do, that wasn't made at that point. So if you're looking at February number, because by the time in April number, we reconciled that Q&D fund, which is result in a unfavorable end of year balance estimate. That's why the loan is needed. I actually take more loan just to cover the differences. So in the February number and the April number, when I do this calculation, there's a differences. And I actually, at that time, it was still Anna. So Anna and I talk about it and eventually reconcile the town book and the Board of Ed book to make sure we have the same beginning balance for the Q&D fund.
I just want to make sure the Board of Ed that's sitting there and the administration that's sitting there today agrees that this is needed. I looked at the May statement of accounts and it looked like there was that the projection was 171,000 balance in the Q&D budget. But I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine with an interfund transfer. I just want to make sure that it's needed by the fund. So if it hasn't been done, I just want to make sure that maybe you and Nikki, if everybody's on the same page, the town and the school, that's fine.
As I mentioned before, when I did this calculation in April, Anna and I was in the same page to need for that $44,000 was needed. Is needed.
I'll add some historical context, Mr. Chairman. Historically, when there was purchase of capital items like this, and in the past where an interfund transfer was used, it was done exactly in this manner.
correct.
A little bit more background on this. This lease was to be placed with TD Bank. TD Bank required a tax-exempt certification from the town. And you can only, for purchases that were done July, August of 2023, we only had a 60-day window to get those purchases in to qualify for the tax exemption certificate. So in as much as we would have liked to place this lease with them, we could not. We were then forced to go to Liberty or to Westfield, which had significantly higher rates. In effect, they were non-taxable rates. Taxable rates. So what we had from TD was non-taxable, but we needed a certificate which we couldn't give them, compared to Westfield and Liberty, which were significantly higher and essentially taxable rates. It was then, when we received again, we were just going through a pro forma transaction, placing a lease for capital equipment out of the respective funds. When it became apparent we would get the $2 million from the state, we came back and said, there's a better way to do this. Let's pay ourselves the money. And we didn't change the complexion of the transaction through the Q&A fund, the Q&D fund. So a separate discussion, if you'd like to have it, is should the complexion of the transaction be changed? But we were simply emulating what we've done in the past and paying ourselves the interest rather than go to the higher taxable rate. So I submit that historically this is the same. I submit that the money is being paid to us. That's a good thing. And as a separate discussion, either for later on today or for another day, should that fund that has a surplus borrow the money? I don't know the answer to that question, and I don't know how this group would react to that question.
Let me try what I think Jenny may be asking. Sorry, Jenny. Is the Board of Ed and the super aware of the fact that this was going to happen this way and it was going to cost them more than they were really getting? The lump sum. Is that what you're asking, Jenny?
I saw it in today's agenda.
But this is the way it is portrayed in the budget.
No,
Yeah.
I understand, but since, all I'm saying is, I love that we're in a position to not have to go to the bank. We get to do it to ourselves. It also gives us the flexibility, I think, to reconsider, let's make sure we actually need it, because it does matter to the funds. So I'm just asking a question to make sure Q&D really needs the money.
So,
I realize if we'd already signed up with the bank, we'd be getting it anyway, and we'd have to play by their terms.
right. So Jen, I just looked up the last statement of accounts that we have for the Board of Ed. The Q&D balance as of April 30th, which is, I think, the numbers that you guys are talking about, the fund balance is $150,000, but that is due to the result of a negative revenue position of over $69,000. So I'm guessing the $150,000, the reason why this loan needs to be put through is because the anticipated expenses at the beginning of the year would need that. I guess that's Jenny's question. If we have a $150,000 fund balance at the end, do we need this loan? I'm not sure anybody's ready to speak to that.
Yeah, and we don't take any position on whether we should pay cash for a capital item. If as a secondary transaction you want to do that, that's certainly acceptable. Fair.
If you go
But,
back,
Mike, that's not, we're not talking about whether we borrow from the bank, we're talking about whether we're borrowing from ourselves. It sounds to me as though Kimmy went through the normal process when Anna was still there. So I would just ask that as a transition issue, there's some discussion about this now that we have some new people in the roles. And since I think we have the flexibility to make the loans to ourselves or not, I guess I just want to make sure that where we sit today, we feel UND needs to bother to borrow the money.
if you go back to budget time, if you look at the projections for the Q&D fund, it drops down towards zero. It doesn't go to zero.
I
But
understand.
if you drew more now, you'd exhaust it sooner. And luckily, the projections, the net end results have ended up better than the projections over the past few years. But that's,
But this is, UND has to pay this money back over 2 years.
yeah,
It's just, to me, it's just a cash flow issue. If the Q&D fund needs $45,000 loans for cash flow purposes, then fine. I'm just asking the question if it needs the cash flow.
Well, at this point, this is how it's budgeted from the spring. So,
We didn't budget to borrow from ourselves. This is a new transaction.
it was budgeted to be borrowed,
It was budgeted to be borrowed from TD Bank.
period.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which, if you then took the purchases and don't borrow,
It would cost it all
Your
in
net-
year one rather
your
than
net
just.
is more,
Yeah, yeah.
which you cannot do. So essentially, the budget tells you you have to do it. How you do it, that's the decision we're talking about.
To reiterate exactly what the chair said, your choices are to not finance, pay in cash, essentially reduce or eliminate the surplus, or borrow over time and extend your cash flow. So again, the plan was always to borrow. We did change borrowers from TD Bank to the town of Granby, but the projections still are predicated on borrowing. If the group wants to go and create a purchase in lieu of borrowing, we could certainly examine that and come back to you another day.
Well, I'm okay.
So going forward, if we ended up moving to strictly cash rather than this mechanism, we'll exhaust the funds sooner, is what's going to happen.
No question.
Yes.
In which case, no cigar as far as I can see.
Well, I'll just say, that's fine. This is part of the nice thing about being able to do this is that we get to make up the rules because we're the bank. So we should have to loan ourselves money. If you don't, if it makes people uncomfortable because of the way the budget was written and there's no way around it, fine. But it seems to me that each fund has reserves for reason, and I would raise a question as to why QND doesn't earn interest when it's on a fund. But it sounds like that's a discussion for a different day.
Further discussion? If not, a motion would be in order.
I move that the Board of Finance approves 2 interfund loans, one from the general fund to the capital equipment improvement fund in the amount of $426,000 for a 4.5-year term, and another one from the general fund to the education, equality, and diversity fund for a 2-year term in the amount of $45,000. Both loans have a fixed interest rate of 4.5%. Each year, the Capital Equipment and Improvement Fund and Education, Quality, and Diversity Fund will repay the general fund principal and interest as illustrated in the attached amortization tables.
Thank you for the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? There being none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? No. Motion carries. Next item, again to Mike and Kimmy, is end-of-year transfers.
Once again, Mr. Chairman, I defer to Kimmy. She prepared this. We'll walk you through it. If there are any questions, either one of us can take them.
Thanks.
So at the end of each fiscal year, we look at all the expenditure accounts to make sure that they have enough budget to cover the expense. So the first table is a transfer between different accounts. And the transfer from is the surplus account, the transfer to is under budgeted account, over budgeted account. So the first one is the legal fee. The legal fee is mainly cover the land use matter, the position search, pension, some cases from the LAFD, the charter, and some cases for the ZMB and PZC cases. The second one is the IT payroll regular salary. That one is in the mid-year, we switched from the IT consultant to a in-house full-time personnel, and the differences between the IT consultant and the full-time regular, we are short of $1,500. The next one is the PD payroll overtime. We're currently still, we were in FY24 short of a regular officer full-time officer. So other 9 officers have to pick up the shift that's caused the overtime. And then the planning and engineering service is to cover clock engineering service fee for project, just like the IWWC, the Inland Wetland Consultant, for those fees. And the staff recommendation to transfer them from the contingency miscellaneous expense, the payroll regular, and from the administration department, and the total for that table is $80,500. Any questions for that one?
Just one question. What caused the overage? The largest chunk here was admin, payroll, regular?
The saving from that is because we didn't have the full-time town manager until March.
Oh, I understand.
So
Okay.
we have a bunch of saving from that line because.
Makes sense. That's on the back of Mr. Fiorentino's hard
Yep.
work. Got it.
Yep, free labor.
Okay.
So the second table, at the end of each year, we look at the potential FY25 retirement. And we try to, because in the budget, we never budgeted the retirement e-payment out, like vacation or PTO, we never budgeted in the regular budget. So for the town size, at the year end, we recommend to make a transfer from the surplus account to the wage settlement account for the anticipated balance. So as of June 30, 2024, that account has a balance of $115,000, and the staff recommendation is to move $70,000 more to that account.
How much did we pay out in 2024?
The 2024, under 100,000.
So because I remember, I think that fund was just under 2.
That fund was around, I had that number. The fund was at the June 30, 2023, that fund I have around like $50,000 left in the balance, and we added 200,000. And then we pay it off, now we have 115.
Those two.
So it's around, I can't give you the exact number.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess essentially I was just trying to budget that we paid out, so we actually utilize like the staff.
Yes. And those vacation or PTO is all per contract, and it's different percentage in each different contract.
Okay.
Other questions from the board? If not, give me the
And
third component.
the last table. So if you look at the FY25 adopted budget for the 10-year small cap the capital equipment and improvement fund budget, you see the significant increase over the years. So the staff is recommended moving another $500,000 surplus from this fiscal year into the small cap fund balance. And you can see a list of the account from transfer from, and then the transfer to is the small cap fund accounts.
And this is similar to what we did at the end
Yes.
of last year.
Last year.
Simply a more flexible pocket to work from. Refer back to the worksheet, budget worksheet as well, that shows the draw from budget, but because of the level of small cap expense increasing, just more needing to go in there. And some of it is reflected in the worksheet going forward, but the more we can pre-position, the better off we are, is what it boils down to. Kimmy, not with this, but with the, Mike, you're going to talk about the boilers later.
I am.
I'll talk, yeah, I'll ask my question then. That's fine. Questions from the board? There being none, if we could have a motion to approve.
I would move that the Board of Finance authorize the transfer of accounts as listed in the document dated July 18, 2024, from Kimmy Chen, Director of Finance, to the Granby Board of Finance.
Second.
Further discussion on the board? If not, those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Jenny? Aye up,
Aye.
aye up there. Kimmy, the next item is the a preliminary projection for the general fund as of end of FY '24.
Yep, so for the general fund balance total at the June 30 is about $12 million. And you see there's three items that is subtracted from that general fund balance to equal to the undesignated fund balance as of June 30 is 10.8 million. So over the years of fiscal year 24, we only have one additional appropriation from the general fund, which is $13,000 for the Castle Library Improvement Project. And then we also has to take away that advance loan that we just approve it for the 2023-24 budget, which is for total of $471,000. And looking down in the middle of the page, there's a list of the favorable and unfavorable result for the FY24 operations. On the expenditure side, after the transfer that we just did on item number 3, the Board of Selectmen expenditure budget will still result in $100,000 surplus. And for the Board of SI surplus for the expenditure side is about $200,000. And if you look at the revenue line, the taxes has a very strong year that we have almost $1 million surplus from the taxes. And for the education grant is an unfavorable result of $348,000, which is mostly for the access cost grant. For the municipal grant, state grant, we have a $305,000, and for the local revenue, we have a $1.5 million overage, which mainly because of the interest earned from the STEEP account. So the result of the FY24 operation, both the expenditure side and the revenue side results in a $2.5 million surplus. When we add it to it, and we have the undesignated general fund balance as of June 30, 2024 as $13.2 million, which represents 23.64%. If we continue for the July 1st balance, we take away the 25 appropriation for the FY25 budget, which is $2.185 million. And the emergency communication fund for the 2.6 instead of 4.6, which will result in a $8.46 million as the undesignated fund balance as of June 1st, 2024, which represents 15.10% of the.
Right where you want to be?
Yes.
So if the state didn't come through with that 2 million, we'd be at 6.4 and about 11.5%, which is what we were expecting to end up with. So this keeps us in a good spot.
Yeah.
And that's after moving.
That's after
Essentially
moving.
a percent over.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, could I offer a couple of comments?
Please.
I still feel like I'm the set of new eyes that was recently brought into town, and I just want to give you my perspective on it, which is all positive. The first thing I remark at is under the expenditures, when the town is able to return 100,000, that is expected, but when you add it to the 500,000 that you just transferred to capital, that's remarkable. So kudos to Kimmy and the other staff for, you for setting a budget, Kimmy, Mark, and everybody else who had a hand in delivering it within budget while delivering important services to the community. With respect to the revenues, again, more than $1 million coming in from the current collection rate. Certain unbudgeted items in terms of municipal state grants were not budgeted as a conservative factor, came in and ultimately improved the bottom line. And then Station 280, permit fees, and as Kimmy mentioned, interest. But to be able to flip the page and know after all is said and done that you are able to take 2.185 million, support next year's budget, and finally move the 4.6 million out of the line now that we know it'll be spent on the communications and end up with 15% is enviable to the other 169 municipalities. So kudos to you, kudos to Kimmy, the town hall staff. This is just simply remarkable work.
And in terms of the BOE budget, the comment, discussion last week was you're still overall at 200 and something. And what we'd seen before was the lag in the revenue from Hartford for the special ed reimbursement, and all came in, apparently. So, comes last minute, perhaps, but
It always comes in, just usually
Yeah,
late.
June 24th.
so,
So,
It always comes in late, but it does usually show up. So that's
Just sometimes not all of it.
750,000
total, yes.
total.
this means they got 682, so that should be
That's great.
much. So that's overall very good picture, which is not always going to be the case. Sherry, do you have anything to add to that as well while you're here?
I don't believe so, Mike. I appreciate your comments. We worked hard at the end of the year to tighten our spending, close POs that had been left open. I really want to give a tremendous amount of kudos to my special education team. They worked really hard to reduce transportation costs by sharing routes. We did so even for summer school this year, which is usually quite challenging to do with summer schedules. We were able to share with surrounding towns to offset some of that transportation cost that we always have our eye on. We are confident that we'll have a surplus of just over 200,000. All of the grants have now been accounted for, and we're in good shape.
Good. Good. Well, this, of course, the 2 million from the state helps, but it certainly puts us in a great position for moving forward, in particular, given what is not on the agenda, but the discussion of overall capital looking forward between the list compiled by you folks is a total of some 77 million, of which I think close to 40 is built into the budgets already. There's 3 million in small capital for the 10-year period each year, plus 4.6, the last bridge that's in the package that's approved already. Obviously, you have something else to talk about here.
We do.
But we're in a good spot to have to be contemplating what should or does not need to be done going forward. So kudos to both boards as well as the administrations for, this is how we'd like it to look every year. Thank you for setting the bar for yourselves.
It's a tough year to do it, too.
Mike, I just had a quick comment.
Please, go ahead.
If I can, I echo all the sentiment of the good work that is done through operations. Also, Kimmy, I like the way this was presented, and maybe you've done it in the past, but I was just noting, and I think it's worth all of us remembering when we talk to our constituents, fund balance at 5, fund balance at 15. 15 it's a good, healthy number, we like that, but 15, if you're a town 4 times our size, is very different than, it only takes 2 million to knock you down to 10%, and it only takes 2 more to knock you down to 5%, and it only takes 2 more to knock it down to no fund balance. So these percentages, when applied to a small town like Granby, make it that much more remarkable, not only that we're able to carry those kinds of reserves, but that the operating budgets come in as close as they do year after year. It's just, I just think it's remarkable. So thank you to everybody.
Yeah, it's good planning and good execution. To Jenny's point, we're one boiler away from being in an unfavorable position with the balance. Thank you, guys. Yeah, let's talk about the boiler.
Mike?
Mr. Chairman, I've got 8 items that don't necessarily completely resolve around financial issues, and I'm not looking for any action on the board's part tonight, but I want to make you aware of things that are percolating that eventually may have a positive impact or impact. The first one is a solar project, and you may say, well, wait a minute, we're the Board of Finance, what about the solar project? There's a solar farm. I just wanted to pass along that it looks like they're going to forward their siting council application in the winter of 24-25. So let's say from November to February. So that one looked like it was being fast-tracked. It is now slower, and I just wanted to communicate that to you. There is a sentiment out there that I've heard that they are putting batteries as part of the solar farm, and they are not. 2 years ago, they filed an application with ISO New England to see if batteries on the site made sense. ISO New England got back to them. They looked at the overall financial status of the project, and related to the solar project, they are not putting batteries on that site. So that's number 1. Number 2, unrelated, there is a battery project that is coming together faster on a plot of land in back of Drago's Kitchen. It's about 3/4 of an acre. We believe the siting council will receive this project's application in July of 24, so later this month. The Board of Selectmen will be introduced to the project on August 5th. Today, via social media, we put out some information. It's called Key Capture, I believe, Energy. They are putting together a battery farm where there'll be about 12, I call them shipping containers. They'll be white. They'll be arranged systematically, and they will draw power during the day, and then when Eversource demands it back, it will be fed back into the grid. So Board of Selectmen introductions on August 5th, if you want to tune into that. Dates for public thereafter, for Q&A, and the project seems to be moving quicker than the solar farm. The battery project is separate and distinct from the solar project. So I know because they're almost co-located, people will think they're together, but they are not. 2 separate projects, siting council. The town has hired an attorney from Updike, Kelly and Spellacy to make sure our interests in front of the siting council are completely maintained and preserved. So if you have questions as an individual, as a board or commission member, please forward them to Abby Kenyon or myself. We'll make sure they get to the parties appropriately. I've passed out to you, and Jenny, you have this. It's the ARPA sheet that was passed by the Board of Selectmen. It's 20 new projects that reallocates $1.67 million. I wanted the Board of Finance to have it. We talked briefly about it yesterday. This puts meat onto the bones. Related to insurance, specifically medical insurance, Kimmy and I have been working diligently. All employees via the contract negotiations have been shifted away from the PPO and on July 1st to the high deductible health plan. Seeds per contract decline over time, and they settle in at about 50% somewhere down the road. As I reported out last month, we have shopped stop loss, and we have changed carriers, avoiding $424,000 of increased stop loss costs, predominantly because of the town's poor medical experience. Again, in time, we'll see if that was, the right move. We will not be shopping Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield. They have by far and away, according to the work our broker has done, by far and away the best contracts to deliver the lowest medical costs. So if we move to another carrier like Cigna, based on the reprojection of costs into their contracts, we would only add money. So it's not that we're not shopping it, we just don't believe there's a lower cost provider out there than Anthem. We also know through Jenny Emery's question a few months ago that our groups in town are slightly larger than average. You've probably heard the normal household family, 2.2 on average. Well, we're 2.7. We're slightly bigger families for the people we employ. That's simply an anomaly that I can't explain, but it adds to the rising cost of our medical. As I mentioned, town side, we have poor expense experience. We've had a premature baby. We've had several cancer issues that have been substantial and have touched upon our stop loss. We are pricing out the state plan. We do not believe that the state plan is a place where we need to be. The reason being is the state must accept all state mandates, where our plan we do not. So there will be a significant cost if we were to ever move to the state. Since we've settled the contracts, we don't contemplate that will be an ask in the coming 4 or 5 years, but we want to be prepared to be sure that the state plan, even if it's higher, is not an option for us. Finally, we're doing work to look at our retirees for perhaps a small amount of savings. There's a chance we can provide the retirees the same medical care into their retirement, meaning Medicare eligible, that we are today at lower cost, but we have to kind of game that out over the next 6 months to a year. And then finally, we're restructuring the year-over-year experience when it's compiled. We received many cuts of the experience for the last budget year. We're probably going to see less, but I hope more meaningful numbers. So just to kind of give you a heads up on that. I also met with the Conservation Commission chair. Betsy, I, and Kimmy are looking to reduce usage of whether it's gas, oil, natural gas, electricity. Whatever we're able to reduce through efficiency, we will then bid out what the rest is, but we're trying to align with the sustainability goals of the commission. So stay tuned for more information. It may be we look at solar on some rooftops, building rooftops. It may be we let CROG bid our electricity, and it may be we look at energy performance loans, which are 0% through Eversource. Some of the items on our capital improvement plan are ripe for that kind of loan, and we'll take those 0% all day long. Finally, bridges and boilers. Jenny, I apologize. I have your copies here. I'll hang on to them for the next time we meet. The first one is a picture of the boilers that Shannon sent to the superintendent and myself. The first picture where Shannon's scratching his head are the 30-year-old boilers. That's what the boiler room looked like. The second picture is what the boiler room looks like today. And it's a little bit of a weird image. I simply showed you the front and side. This is not an expanded boiler room. On the right side of the picture, the Cleaver Brooks boilers, that's simply the front. Everything you saw was in that space to the left side. So it's a much cleaner look. They poured some new concrete. They cleaned up the oil of 30 years and whatever storage was there. And they painted. I'm not going to tell you could eat off the floor, but somebody might. Moving on, I gave you 2 select pages from an engineering report we have related to the Doherty Bridge. The Doherty Bridge was not one of the 5 bridges that went in front of the voters in 2019. There's good news and there's bad news. The good news is the state has agreed to cover half the cost of this replacement, $1,160,000. The bad news is we have to pick up $1,160,000. Kimmy, I, and Kirk are meeting tomorrow. The reason there's some urgency to it is we want to make sure that the available money from the 2019 Bridges Bond, even though it didn't encompass Doherty, should be available so that we can put a question with your permission, with the Board of Selectmen's permission, in front of the voters to be able to reprogram that money. No additional borrowing, simply reprogramming the permission that we have toward the Doherty Bridge. You can see the underlayment is crumbling, and you can see there's a delamination of the iron beams. So from my perspective, this got my attention, and we're going to try to not rush it through, but we've got a window to sign that state reimbursement to commit it, and we also have a window no later than September 5th to put a question in front of the Board of Selectmen to get it on the ballot for November. So that's a bit of background on boilers and bridges. And finally, without going into a lot of detail, Jenny, myself, Mark, and a few folks are working on looking at the Methodist Church, whether or not it fits into our plans going forward. I wanted the Board of Finance to know that. Not a lot more information to share, other than we're simply looking at it. It's a property up for sale.
So, my question, this is what's approved for the remainder of the ARPA money?
That is correct. There was 3.55 million. Phase one spent about 1.9 million. In the late June or early July Board of Selectmen meeting, they approved the remaining 1.6476 million on these new 20 projects.
And the ones marked yes are in the 77 million.
It is correct.
And come out.
Well,
Okay,
yes.
that's good. Mike, we're getting there inch by inch, so. Bill, go ahead.
Like, I got a question on the specific item, 2411. The walking trail.
Yes.
My memory serves me right, we got a grant to put a walking path on the perimeter of the playing fields.
You are correct.
That is not this item, is it?
That is this item, yes.
That is this item.
Yep, let me lay out the whole shooting match for you. The grant was a steep grant, 460,000, and we had to match. We were matching approximately 113. So let's call it 580. The plans went out to bid. They were designed by our town engineer, Kevin, and the results came in excess of 600,000, 625-ish, 630-ish. Not surprising given COVID, not surprising given prevailing wage. It's a 1.25 mile walking trail with some what I call accoutrements. There's some benches, there's some planters. We had to take out some trees. We had to plant some trees. There's some drainage work that we need to do at the mouth of the entrance to Salmon Brook. And then there was a question of whether we have plain old andesite or some stamped concrete, which will make it look a little more elegant. We initially value engineered about $80,000 off of it. However, we also needed somewhat of a specialist in order to be able to do concrete and andesite sampling to be sure it was built properly. And they needed to assist the town to make the filings with the state for the steep grant. That came at a cost of about $39,000. So when you add the over budget number plus $39,000, you were probably in the neighborhood of $660 or so. So we came to the board and several residents spoke, and they said, let's do it right. Let's not value engineer it out. If we've got the ARPA money and the difference is sending it back or programming it to this. So the additional 122 is on top of the 460, which is on top of the match. So this thing is significantly mid-sixes, but the mobilization will be toward the middle of August with a November 15th end date. So that track, that walking trail that we've been waiting for a couple of years, will be in place by fall.
That's beautiful. The follow-up question was, when that was mentioned to us, I asked the question, will it be plowed in the winter?
It will
And
not.
but there are people that go down there and they use the road in the winter as one, I can comment on that. And so in the good part of the year, you got the use of the path.
Yes.
In the inclement season, you got to go back on the road.
And there's a balancing act there. Could completely agree. There's a bit of a balancing act because we have 14 public works gentlemen, and there may not be the ability to timely plow that. So at the moment, Kirk is saying, can't do it, don't have enough staff.
Okay. Thank you.
Jumping to the bridge, you had mentioned the unused portion of the bridge bond. Do we know what that portion is right now?
Right now, Kimmy's got a preliminary number of 915,000, which is not 1,160,000. We're meeting with Kirk tomorrow to get precise numbers on what he's contracted for the bridges, what he has unspent. We don't want to recommit money that we need somewhere else.
Sure.
So tomorrow's an exercise on locking down what we know on the existing 5 bridges in hopes of pushing it to 1.16. If not, we're still in a position, if it does turn out to be 915 or $1 million or $1,050,000, we'll be able to sign the commitment from the state, and then as part of the upcoming budget, make sure that one's approved with the additional amount to marry with what's left to get to the 116. So of all things, this is the 2025 boilers. It's got to happen. You see why it has to happen.
Yeah.
And it'll be done as part of unspent bond funds coupled with new capital money if we need it. And we'll know a little bit better after tomorrow's 8 o'clock meeting.
Part of the deal with funding the boilers through the high school project was the transfer of the 134. I think that it ended up, there was a couple hundred.
250,000.
Yes.
And Kimmy, where is that?
Is from the encumbrance and AP from the Board of Ed, and then one of the, another portion is from one of the liability account from the Board of Ed. And
And it's sitting in the capital reserve.
yes,
Yeah, that was the answer.
It's in
See it.
capital, non-recurring?
non-recurring,
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's 250 there, plus
250.
what's in the mod. The 287, you've already built that into,
The 287?
it's in capital non-recurring
Yeah, it is in capital non-recurring,
as of June 30th.
June 30.
Close out.
And recognize, we're prepared to pivot. In the event we find out there's insufficient money, that maybe 915 is truly the number and we're 200,000 short, there's this bond repaving, road repaving of 201 on the ARPA. We will go right back to the Board of Selectmen if we find that's necessary and reprogram that too. Again, it has to be obligated, so that may, in this instance, be a good use of that fund.
You still have the Simsbury Road Bridge, which has money set aside, and that's for next year. Is that correct, or the year after?
We spoke to Kurt this afternoon. Did he say he's not going to start until the summer?
I believe, yeah, we had several discussions on 5 of the bridges. One of them is just getting designed, and one of them construction starting later in the summer. I don't remember which one is which.
He told me, but for what it's worth, that we're very interested in the Simsbury Road Bridge closing because it means in access to some of the farm fields, which we're hoping will be taken into consideration in the budgeting. But in any event, he told me recently that he's looking at summer of 2025 for the Simsbury Road Bridge.
That sounds right, because it's only in design right now.
And that's the last of
Yes.
what's approved from
Yes.
the bond. Okay. Other questions, comment? If not,
But I just actually had a general question on the library one. It's at the 2024-012.
Yep.
I guess I recall that there was some discussion around holding off on that because there was other work, design work potentially with the roof. Was that work completed and now this is good to move forward?
So there's two different discussions that I'm aware of. One goes back to the original Phase 1 ARPA. It predates me. My understanding was a large sum was allocated to the library, and because it was overlapping, library gave it up and it went to other places. Revisiting it now, speaking to Amber, she said, we have needs that will not intersect with a possible library addition. Carpeting, painting, and some other things, adding some doors into one particular room and so forth. So the commitment from Amber was any dollar spent out of ARPA to refresh the library and make it a better place will not be torn down or otherwise, if we hit the lottery and we do the library expansion next year or the year after, we don't want to lose a single cent. So we are spending $180,000 on paint, on carpet, and on a few other things that will be preserved and will not be impacted by any renovation that may happen down the road. That was the commitment.
I think it was a roof thing that they were holding off on to make sure that whatever work they did didn't ruin that before to even talking about the expansion.
Yeah.
Other questions? If not, date of the next meeting, will be August 26th.
Mr. Chairman, I am out on a vacation. I apologize. So it will be aptly handled by Kimmy and Betsy.
In Kimmy, we
I'll
trust.
be here.
Duly noted.
The auditor will be here that week. The auditor.
Time to take a vacation now.
That's why I told him.
It was already booked.
I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Abstentions, none. Motion carries.
Yeah.
Good night. Very good.
Good night, everybody. Very efficient. Thank you.